don't get too tied to the business where you're so tied to it that you can't let it go. Always prepare yourself. Always prepare the business to be sold and prepare yourself for that.
Welcome back to the Mark Faris Experience. I'm your host, Mark Faris. Today, we're speaking with Phil Masiello. He is a 4 times exit entrepreneur. So he's gone full cycle 4 times, and he's the founder of CrunchGrowth Revenue Acceleration Agency. It's a full service marketing firm that guides consumer brands in scaling profitability. And he's a real, we'll say, not only family man, but he has a lot of experience in e-commerce, digital marketing, and just he's a brand expert. And he specializes in Amazon, social media, and multi-channel marketing as well. Phil, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate you having me on.
You have quite the track record there. It took a little bit longer to do your intro. So I'm really looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, I did a speech back in February with an entrepreneur group, and I started it out and I said, I founded 10 businesses in my life, and they all went, "Ooh, wow, ooh." And I waited a minute, and then I said, but only 4 have been successful. So, I'm not hitting on all cylinders.
I think I tell entrepreneurs, if you go full cycle here, so you start something from scratch and then you build it and then you sell it, it's like making the NHL. So I used to be a hockey player, right? And so not only do you do it once, you did it 4 times. So to me, it's like you're a Hall of Famer on that. But why don't we take it back to your origin story, maybe share a little bit about your background. What made you become an entrepreneur?
Yeah, that's a great question. I grew up in New York. I grew up in the restaurant business. My family was in the restaurant business. And so I was always in the food business. And I thought that was what my career path was going to be. I was going to own a restaurant because that's sort of what we did. And I went to college down in Miami and working in the hotels and restaurants. And I decided, that's just not a good way of life for me at the time. I could see it heading down a path that I didn't want to go down. But I still knew a lot about food. So when I came back to New York, I started a specialty food retail store and outside of the city in a great area. And it was an utter disaster. I was 26 years old, 27 years old, and it was just a complete failure of leadership, a failure of process management. Did it for 3 years. It wasn't good. And I sold it, took whatever money I had, and I came down to Maryland, went to graduate school, not because I thought I needed more education, but I needed to think differently. And that's when I got involved with, made an investment in a small company that was growing specialty food in the Washington, D.C. market. And we scaled that business. And that's where I really got to understand, because the people that were doing it were really, really smart. And I got to understand how to raise capital for a business, how to allocate capital for a business, how to do budgeting correctly, just all the systems and processes you need, and then leadership, et cetera. And we wound up building that business pretty significantly, and we wound up selling it. I wasn't.
How long was that process?
Oh, it was about 8 years.
Wow.
And,
okay.
Yeah. But I was a principal, but I didn't have control or, a significant amount. And then I did have an idea for another business. And I started a business called the Daily Market, which were grab and go meal stores. And we opened up 4 stores on our own with our own capital. And then we went out and we raised a significant amount of money at the time in an A round. And that was great. We also built a meal-focused website to deliver meals, similar to Blue Apron and all. And that caught the attention of a major supermarket chain. And that's how we wound up exiting. What the problem that occurred with that was we were having trouble scaling because we were looking for a very specific footprint. And so was Starbucks, and so was Panera Bread, and so were all these other people fighting for the same locations. And Starbucks was able to pay a lot more than we were. So we were opening up stores slowly. We tried the acquisition route and it didn't work. And then we had an offer to sell the stores, which we took. And we took the website to Harris Teeter, and we wound up using that to build their shop from home. But I will tell you that It was great. It was a great experience. It was fantastic, but I was not a good employee in a company that size. They're a multi-billion dollar company. It just, to me, fundamentally, we just weren't on the same page. Um, I was thinking too much outside the box, too much focused on the customer. They're more focused on transactions and daily things and politics and silos. And so I had the opportunity to build Raw Beauty with Carol Alt. She was a model back in the 80s, well known in Canada. She was the girlfriend of Alexa Yashin, who played for Ottawa.
Yeah.
And so we thought that the best place to take that was on the shopping channel. So we started at HSN in Florida, and we did well. And then we moved to the shopping channel in Canada, and we actually did better in Canada on a per capita basis than we did in the United States. But that allowed us to get really an expanded brand out there quickly because the shopping channels have tremendous reach. So we got very good exposure and then started to scale. And then we got into Ulta Beauty and Sephora and Shoppers Drug Mart in Canada and Dwayne Reed in the United States. And then we caught the attention of a division of J&J, and we wound up selling the business to them, and we stayed on. Carol and I had to stay on for a couple of years, complete the marketing, but I had this other idea to do a shaving brand. And so while we were still doing that, and we approached Energizer, because Energizer owned Schick and Persona and Wilkinson, and they're the second largest razor company. And so we wound up getting an American-made razor from them, and we started the business. It took off very slowly. It was very difficult. We weren't getting the traction, and this was before Dollar Shave Club and Harry's and everybody, and we just weren't getting the traction. And one morning I woke up, and I'm a sports fan, so I was reading, on my phone, I was reading the sports news, and there was a pitcher named Brian Wilson, pitched for the San Francisco Giants. He had this beard that Major League Baseball hated at the time. They didn't want guys to have beards, but he was such a good pitcher, they just let it happen. And he had Tommy John surgery, got traded to the Dodgers. It was the first time he was going to pitch in a year, and it was big news. And so I sent a letter to his team. I sent an email to his team, said, "Hey, I'll offer Brian $1 million to shave with our razor." And I got back a response saying, "Well, we'll run this by Brian." And that's all I needed. Once we did that, I gave it to the PR firm. We are in discussions with Brian Wilson to shave his beard for $1 million. And that just exploded across everywhere. The sports news, the social media, people were sending us pictures of every body part saying, "I'll buy this. I'll shave this for $5,000. I'll shave this for $10,000. I'll do this. I'll do that." So that is really what launched us, because then we got exposure in earned media. And then we were being interviewed by all these sports channels, and that really helped us grow. But then the situation became where Brian, TMZ caught him coming out of a gym in LA, and they said, "Are you going to shave for $1 million?" And he said, "No." And the whole thing exploded again, because then people were mad at us that how could a guy turn down $1 million?
Yeah.
This whole thing is ridiculous. Blah, 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 blah. But that really is what launched us. And then Dollar Shave Club and Harry's came along, and then the situation got hot. Everybody wanted to be in the razor business. And so we became a prime target, and we had John Scully, who used to be the CEO of Apple Computer, and Michael Phelps. They were involved in the company, and they were, I didn't have control, but, I was a significant shareholder, but didn't have control. And then John said, there were a couple of deals that came through, and he said, you got to take this deal. And so we wound up selling, which I thought was a little premature, and that led to what we do today, CrunchGrowth, because Edgewell, which was the personal care division of Energizer, called us up and said, "We don't know anything about direct to consumer. We like what you did. We need somebody who can help us build websites that are consumer focused, help us sell on Amazon, not to Amazon." And so we started doing that. And then I said, I don't want to be tied to one client. So we started getting other clients, and that's what we focused on. We're very good at consumer focused products. That's our sweet spot. And it doesn't matter if it's technology that's consumer focused. We just understand consumers really well.
What a phenomenal journey. There's a lot to dissect there, and thanks for sharing that. And so right now what you're focusing on right now, do you have a number of different clients, or do you have one specific, or are you just right across anybody that wants to grow their band? If they're a B2C, you'll help them grow and scale.
No, we have a lot of clients,
Yeah,
but all different at all different stages.
got it.
I'm still an entrepreneur at heart. So for me, I still have a sweet spot for startups and small guys trying to scale. The bigger brands obviously help you pay the bills and allow you to invest in the smaller guys, which I love. But we're very specific because we don't just take everybody who comes to us, because you have to be able to answer the question of, what makes you different? What's the point that's going to make you different? I don't want to hear that you're better, because better is
Yeah,
subjective. But what makes you different? And if you can't answer that, we're nice about it. We'll help you find someone else, but I don't want to do it, because then we have nothing to advertise. We have nothing to talk about. And then you're going to be complaining that your marketing firm didn't do its job, and you're not satisfied with the results. So we're very, very clear about who we are and who we work with.
so that's actually a really good point. So that's not something that when they come to you, you go through an interview process and figure out what makes them different. They need to like do the work themselves to figure out what in the marketplace does their product or service actually, how does it differentiate itself. So they need to have an understanding of that. Is there a process that if somebody doesn't know what that is, because it's such a good question, and I love that. I love that you have that, because I think most marketing firms would be like, yeah, 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 and then they guess what their differentiator is in this. They don't know the marketplace, right?
Right.
And so I'm curious to know, how do, like, on average, on a percentage basis, how many companies actually know what their differentiation is?
Oh, I think everybody thinks they do, but when
Yeah,
you ask them, I would say less than 10% truly have a point of difference.
right.
And if they don't have it, or they can't explain it, certainly we'll offer to help them do it, because we do
Yeah,
have a process for trying to figure that out.
yeah,
Where we run into problems is that, no, I don't need that. I know exactly who I am, and you're
right.
wrong.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
then I can be wrong. 2 years later, they'll be back going, I think you were right, and we need some help. Okay, but so we do have systems in place and processes in place, because at the end of the day, we also help build brands, and we do all kinds of things. Because even if you have a company that went from, let's say, 0 to 10 million, you get to that, you're an entrepreneur, you're a founder, you get to that 10 million mark, right? You get a little stuck. You hit a wall. It's hard to get from 10 to 20 and 20 to 50. The ones that do really, I think, have some really good people around them. So we wind up hitting that all the time, saying, hey, 90% of the time you have to change your messaging. You have to change your focus. If you're stuck at 10 million, or you're stuck at 20 million, or stuck at 30 million, there's an obstacle there. So let's figure out what it is. So we do that on a regular basis. So we're not saying, we just walk away. We'll offer it to them and say, look, we can help you do that, but I don't want to take your business right now, because you're not going to be happy with us.
What would you say is, for the listeners out there, the 90% that don't know, what questions would you say, or activities would you tell them to go and maybe help explore what that differentiation is? Maybe you can give them a shortcut to be able to figure that out.
Yeah, you talk to your customers and see what they tell you about your product. If you're actively selling, you have an opportunity to talk to the people who have purchased and say, "Why did you buy my product? What was it?" And listen to what they have to say. Was it? And they'll tell you why. And if you see 5, 6, 7, 10 people that say the same thing over and over again, you'll have an understanding of exploring a little deeper what that path is of where you were different. Um, it could be your messaging. It could be marketing. When you look at something like Manscaped, I don't know if you're familiar with those guys,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
but yeah, those guys did a phenomenal job. Their whole point of difference was how they marketed, right? They took it and they gave great value, and they focused a basic shaving, a basic razor on a part of the body that was not being focused on. Right. So all they did was really, it was a different use case. And then they understood their marketing. They understood their customers so well that they put every effort into, um, MMA and Ultimate Fighting Champion and all that, because that's who they're marketing to. And I think they did a brilliant job. But it took them a couple of years to get there. If you go back in time, their minimum viable product, they actually had a small razor that they were using, and they created a couple of different marketing tools. And then a year later, they did a little bit better. And then it was really the third or fourth year that they started to really get their legs underneath them. So sometimes it takes a little while, but always talk to your customer. They're going to tell you. They're going to tell you what they like, what they don't like.
Powerful. The creative idea that you came up with to scale your company. Um, how important, and have you always been creative in regards to taking an idea and it's like, hey, listen, this can be actually applied and we can scale a business, and how can you be more creative to be able to come, like that was a game changer that you came up in your business to be able to scale it up. How do you become more creative, and what was that in you?
It comes from a different place. It's even when we're dealing with clients, I'll think about it, and it may take me a couple of days, and I'll go, because you have to think about, how am I going to break through the clutter? Because there's a whole bunch of clutter out there.
Yeah.
Everybody's advertising, everybody's got ads, people are inundated with messages on social media. So you have to say, how am I going to break through? What am I going to do to break through the clutter? How am I going to be different, even in what we're talking about, even in what we do? And so sometimes it just takes me thinking and studying to come up with some sort of an idea. Uh, do they always work? Not always, but I'm not afraid of, I am totally not afraid of failure. I never have been. And so I'll try anything, as long as nobody gets hurt and you're not insulting anybody. Those are my really two rules.
That's so smart with the beard idea. Just throwing that out there, man. Because I've been told there's two different. There was a billionaire that was talking about in regards to scale and growth. It's like they were talking about leadership. That's like a massive one, but then like a creative campaign can make a
Yeah.
game changer. And
Yeah.
that's where, in this case, I mean, that was a perfect example of thinking outside the box. Somebody that's famous that everybody wants them to, nobody wanted them to have it, and it's like you just threw that out there and went viral,
Yeah.
and that's what it blew up the company, to a point where you have all these celebrities there that are enrolled with you as well. So that's where, when you started going down and thinking, okay, what about we have a real estate investment firm, and then we have a real estate brokerage. So it's like, how can we take that same kind of concept? That's where my mind's starting to spin as you're going through. So I got to make sure that you got me a good action item here for after.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you had shared as well that the second, we'll say, initiative that you went on after when you first started there, you had mentioned something about a failure of leadership.
Yeah.
This was like early in your career. Can you maybe share some of the lessons learned of the failure side of it? And through the years of your massive success, when you look back at that young Phil, what advice would you give him when he after he went through that?
I still carry it with me today, to be honest with you. That first one hurt, and it hurt me.
Yeah.
It hurt a lot. But I'll tell you, I've interviewed tons and tons of entrepreneurs. And one of the things that I felt at that time was that I'm the founder of the company. I'm the entrepreneur. I should have all the answers. And that is a failure in and of itself, because you can't have all the answers, and you have people that you're hiring. So you have to let them do what they understand to do. And I could not do that on the first one. I couldn't do it for some reason. I felt like I had to know everything and I had to control everything. And I was so blinded by it that I couldn't even set up the proper management processes. So I was working 12 to 14 to 16 hours a day because I wasn't even smart enough to take a step back and say, these are the processes. This is how we open up the store. This is how we close the store. This is how we do this. This is how we do that. It was just a complete and total failure. And, the store itself was busy in spite of itself. The store was busy. We were doing sales, but I carry that with me. So if you ask me today, what would I tell Phil back then? I would say, shut up and listen. Shut up and pay better attention, because what you're doing is destructive.
Mm,
And so I think about that. I've thought about it I think about it constantly, because even in this business, as we get to another level, you have to change the process. You have more people, you have to change the process. And I have people that I hire, and I have to let them go and make mistakes and do what they do and not get upset over mistakes. We learn from it. Because we all make mistakes every single day. So
Yeah, no, that's phenomenal leadership principle for sure. So I think what comes to mind perhaps with some entrepreneurs when they hear that, it's like, well, like nobody is at the level that I am, or the we'll say the you can call it victim talk, or the mindset is, well, nobody does it as good as I do. Like, how do you find people that can actually give really good ideas where they're like they say something and it's like, yeah, that's wonderful. I never thought of that. Because it's one thing when you're, like somebody that's coming in and you see that they're not even close to that level. And then I've worked with others where they're like, oh my goodness, like you are like a godsend. And so how do you find those people? And then are they nurtured and bred up, or do you just, find them by, we'll just say, recruiting? And how would you even find them if that was the case?
yeah, well, I'm always unconventional with certain things, and we do handle customer service for ourselves, and we do it for some of our clients. And um, I was I go to the gym in the morning. I stop off at Dunkin' Donuts to get myself a coffee, and they had hired this young woman who was behind the counter, and the place gets mobbed. I mean, mobbed, and people, how people are in the morning. They're stressed, and
Yeah.
she's just smiling and happy, and she's managing everybody, and people are yelling, and she doesn't care. She's like, she's got this great attitude. And by the time this is the third or fourth time that I saw her. By the time I got to the counter, I wrote my phone number down and I said, call me. I said about work, not about anything else. I know I'm handing you my card. I'm not saying call me because I want to date. I'm saying
Yeah.
call me about business. And she did. I said, look, we have an opportunity. We have this business. We need customer service. We need somebody to answer the calls, answer the emails, things like that. And the criteria is you have to have a great attitude. I can teach you how to write emails. I can teach you how the systems. you know. And so we hired her, and she was phenomenal. She's still with me today. We're
Amazing.
talking about somebody 12 years ago, 13 years ago that I found. And then, but at the same time, I tell people when I hire them what my flaws are, because I know what my flaws are. And I'll say, this is what I'm good at, and this is what I am not good at. So this is why I'm hiring you, because you are good at this. So I'm going to help you with this. You're going to help me with this. And don't be afraid. I have no ego. Don't be afraid if you have to yell at me. Don't be afraid if you have to get mad at me. Don't be afraid to tell me that I'm wrong. Don't be afraid. It doesn't matter to me if you tell me I'm wrong. We may debate it. I'll listen. I may come out saying, I don't think I'm wrong. We're going to do it anyway. But, a lot of times, at least you had your voice heard.
Yeah, I love that. And it's a really good point that as a leader of a company, leader of a department, it's like even if you are not hiring, you're always looking, you're always recruiting.
Absolutely.
And so I've done the same, Phil, where it's like I run into somebody, I'm like, hmm.
Yeah.
And you basically you grab their number, not to go and date, but it's a great recruiting where I'll give it to the manager. And like a lot of times we've had some really incredible people because they're not thinking about your industry. They're doing something else, but they have all the key traits where they're going to
Yeah.
be really successful. And you plant an idea, and that's what a really good leader does. In my experience, as a great leader, they basically set a higher vision for somebody that they didn't think was possible. And so that's the cool thing as a leader, you're always keeping an eye out for talent. And it's interesting, Phil, because when you start looking for talent, you start seeing it out there. And then when you start addressing, all of a sudden people are attracted. People are like, where are you finding all these people? It's like, hey, I found them in the Dunkin' Donuts drive through. But if you keep doing that, we meet a lot of people on a day-to-day basis. And that's why it's really powerful. I tell people, like, go out, have lots of conversations with people, because one relationship can change the game for you.
I'll give you another quick one, another quick story. Had this office. We were in the shaving business, and we had a warehouse, and really difficult to get warehouse sort of manager who can also fulfill the orders. Right. That's sort of what you need. Manage that team. Make sure the inventory is managed correctly. And, our offices were about a mile away. And this guy comes to the office, small building, comes to the office, young guy, and he says, can I cut your grass? Can I cut the grass and do you know, your stuff? I said, yeah, sure, no problem. So pay him. He's doing it for about a couple of months. Then he comes and says, I noticed such and such. The building had like a front porch, and he said, it needs to be painted. And I got a couple of guys. I'll manage them. You can paint them. You can go out your side door and until it dries. I said, okay. And then, there was another thing that I saw him doing, and then I see him in the neighborhood, like, and so I said to him, what's your goal? What are you trying to do? You're trying to build a business here of
Yeah.
cutting grass and stuff? And he really couldn't answer it. He didn't really have a goal for himself yet. I said, I have a job for you. If you want to stop doing this, you come and see me. I said, I have a job for you. He came about a week later. I took him to the warehouse and I said, here's what the problem is. And I show him the warehouse and I show him how the flow goes and everything. I said, I need somebody who can manage this whole process. He said, I think I can do it. I said, okay. I said, I'll help you. I don't want you to think, hey, if I have a question, I can't call Phil. I said, I stop by here twice a day. I come in the morning, I come in the afternoon. I said, I make sure that things are done. He's like, yeah, no problem. Within 2 weeks, he had the whole system organized. He had everybody understanding what's supposed to happen, inventory, how we were doing inventory, getting the products out on time, because we could see it in the office if they were processing the orders on time. And he was with me for a couple of years, just managing the work. Never thought that he could do that. Never even dreamt of it. And then that's what he did. He was suddenly a e-commerce fulfillment manager.
Amazing. Amazing. What a great story. And, I think you can change lives that way.
Yeah,
And you expand your reach of talent as well, right? Because you're going into other industries that didn't think that they were going to be coming into yours. And yeah, I think keeping the virtual bench, even if you're not looking right now, keeping that conversation going where it's like every position you have somebody ready to go. So it's like as soon as somebody, leaves or transitions or maybe a new role comes up, it's like you go to your Rolodex, your virtual bench, you're like, oh, this would be good. And you make a phone call. Like, can you imagine like when we've done that, it's made such an impact because somebody comes in, they start right away, they're already pre-vetted and
yeah,
everybody's happy, right? But it takes a little bit of forethought, foresight, so to speak, to be able to be ready for that. But I think as a leader, that's something that we should always be doing.
yeah. I agree with you
Yeah.
100%.
Okay, so you've exited a number of companies. You said for one of them that we think we sold a little bit early. Are there any, because I've heard this with I have a number of different connections there where they've sold and then they have this big lump sum of money in. They're like, I miss the cash flow. I miss the cash flow. I like having that income coming in. And um, do you regret selling any of the businesses? And then what lessons learned would you or can you share with the listeners that when you are going to exit, to keep these in mind that made maybe the fourth exit more, we'll say, a little bit more smooth than, let's say, the first or second.
Well, the the thing that I do, I am not motivated so much by money. I mean, I have what I need. My kids are well taken care of. They're all educated. They're all going through college. All those things are taken care of.
Yeah.
So any chunks of money that I get, I give to my wife and I let her control it, because if I have it, I'll do something stupid like go out and buy a car that I don't need. So if I don't have it, then I can continue to do what I do every day, and I continue to feel like, and I love what I do because it keeps me thinking. But the one thing I will say about selling the company is this, and every entrepreneur that I've ever spoken to who has exited his company will tell you the same thing. You get a little bit depressed because that's part of you. You put so much effort into it. So if you go from, which I did, I went from selling raw beauty right into the razor business. There was no time to be depressed. Selling raw beauty was the right thing to do at the right time. Going into the razor business was the right thing to do at the right time, but selling it, I thought, was a little premature. And so, I got home after it was all done. You got this whirlwind
Yeah.
of legal documents and due diligence that you go through, and then it's finally over. and you're sort of like, okay, now what? And I'm home and I'm sitting on the back porch drinking coffee, watching my dogs run around the woods, and I'm thinking, what am I going to do now? Because again, I think in terms of product. I need to find a product that I can go and focus on. So what's the product? And you know, but I was in a funk, and we just had this conversation. I just had this conversation with a guy named Eric Fry, who founded a business, a very successful one. He had an 8-figure exit on men's men's laundry detergent. Actually, we went through Y Combinator and all. But and he was saying it's not uncommon for guys to feel that way, and guys, especially entrepreneurs, don't want to admit that they're feeling a little bit
Right.
depressed, and they
Yeah.
don't want to say to their buddy, and their buddy's always going to say the same thing. Oh, come on, have a beer, you'll feel better. We talk, even though you've got this turmoil. Whereas women, they develop these support groups and they rally around each other and they call. But guys are afraid to do that. They're afraid to
Right.
expose themselves as being a little bit weak. And so thankfully, Edgewell called and said, we want to do this. And that started me thinking. I was like, okay, well, this is a project. This will keep me occupied for a while until I figure out my next move. But I think entrepreneurs should never, don't get too tied to the business where you're so tied to it that you can't let it go. Always prepare yourself and
Hmm.
always prepare the business to be sold and prepare yourself for that. Don't sit there and think, okay, this is me and I'm so tied to this business, right? You don't want that. You want to be able to step away, hire the right people, hire the right team, and then start stepping away when the time's right to let the business go. So you can look at what Bezos did, right? He put in Andy Jassy and he started to step away and step away and step away. I mean, he's still involved. He still like looks at numbers, I'm sure, still has data, but at the same time, he's not involved in the day to day. And it's slowly becoming not Jeff Bezos' Amazon anymore, right? It's just becoming Amazon, right?
Got it.
So I think that you have to set yourself up and not be so tied to it.
Yeah, I think that's really wise counsel because I know looking at our businesses, it's like I get that you have like your. It's easy to. I'm not saying it's right, but it's like almost there's an identity with
Exactly.
that, right? And when it transitions off, it's like you put so much blood, sweat, and tears all through the years. It is like kind of like a baby in a way. Right? It's like
Exactly.
so that's really good advice. Now, when you do transition, you get all the right leaders in, and you get to kind of that highest, we'll say, the pinnacle of the business. You're the CEO, and you basically passed off all the hats. What are the remaining hats that a CEO should always make sure that they're looking after at the end of the day?
You always set up goals at the beginning of each year, whether it's financial goals or human resource goals or a combination of all of them. I'm a big fan of the 1-page business plan. I think that it's best for people. They can stick it on their wall so everybody knows where we're trying to get to quarterly, um, annually, etc. So you want to march to those. So you can, if you set up the correct dashboards, then you can watch what people are doing, and then if you catch it early enough, if there's a problem, you'll see it and you can hop on a call, or bring that person in, go and visit and say, what's going on. At this point, what I feel like my role is to develop the leadership. And my role is really about closing the deal, right? Closing deals with people, closing deals with brands, because that's sort of, I have the pedigree. And so you bring me in when you've done the work and you feel like this is a correct target for us. You bring me in to close the deal. That's what my job is. I also do, because I speak, because I have the show, because I've written books. I'm also the primary lead generation source, right? We do outsourcing, outreach, and things like that, but I'm also the primary person to do lead gen and then pass that on to people. And but really, for me, it's about strategy and making sure that we're hitting the numbers.
So clarity on vision with the one-page business plan. Here's where we're going, and then getting clear dashboards to hold everybody accountable, developing the leadership, and then closing deals, and then the lead gen side of it. Those would be the main, we'll
That's
say,
that's
hats.
that's what I do every day. Yeah.
No, it's so good. It's so good. It's interesting. when I transitioned a number of years ago in the real estate brokerage side, I was selling 150 homes a year. I was leading the team. We were doing 1,000 sales. And I got to the point where I'm like, oh my goodness, I don't even know what a CEO should be doing. It was like, I have no idea. I was like, I thought I had it overall, but I didn't have it clarified to a scorecard. And I transitioned out of selling because we were hitting a ceiling of 1,000 for a few years in a row. And I transitioned out, and then I started diving into the EOS traction, scaling up, Vern Harnish, Jim
Oh yeah.
Collins, building the lead, the leadership team, and getting our strategy down. And I basically I boiled it down to like this acronym that is very much aligned with what you had here as well. So it's like for me, it was like V is so it's valued. So V is vision. So setting the vision and setting the culture of the company. A is accountability. So you're holding the company accountable to those key metrics. Cash, and then culture is the third. And then love is like letting people know you love them. Right. And then U is understanding. So staying, reading, learning, studying, and then E is enlisting the right people and building the org chart out. And then D is developing leadership, which is exactly very similar to what you had said there. Um, but that's like a big thing that you can never really delegate those, or at least keep those top of mind if you were to summarize it.
Yeah. I've known Vern for about 30 years, and he that's where I got the one page business plan from many, many years ago, and I still believe in it. And he was on my show. His I think Vern's a brilliant guy. He
Yeah.
gets you thinking.
Yeah, I have his book somewhere. I went to one of his the Gazelles, the scaling up workshops there. He had a big conference, and he actually signed my book. Yeah, keep scaling, right? He signed. So there you go. A small world, but what he did in that book, that was actually part of that scaling. And what I love so much is it does a good overarching, and it'll give you like really, but he pushes you down different rabbit holes. And so it's this book that is like a full on university degree, I think, in scaling companies. So I really, it was powerful for me and was very helpful.
He there's two things that I took away from Vern, and I think scaling is great. The one page business plan I took away, but the other thing he said long time ago when we were just talking, he said, I'm never afraid to call anybody that I want to talk to. He said, I never was. He said, when I was in college, I was able to get Ronald Reagan to come and speak at my school. I got a meeting with John Ivey and Steve Jobs. He said, and I thought about it. He's like, what's the worst that can happen? They can say no, they can not take your call or whatever. And I'll tell you a quick story. We were out raising money when we had the daily markets. This is decades ago. We were out raising money, and I was sitting there, and you know how that is. I mean, it's a grind.
Yeah.
Raising capital is a very difficult thing. And I read an article about Jerome Kohlberg, Kravitz, and Roberts, but he had left KKR and he was on his own. And he liked bootstrap guys, and he liked, these things. So I called him. I cold called him at home, and I got his home phone number. I called him, and I said, can I speak to Mr. Kohlberg? And they said, who is this? I said, Phil Masiello. And he gets on the call, and he said, hi. He said, so I start going into my spiel, my pitch, and he's like, who is this? I says, Phil Masiello from Daily Market. I got this business, and and he says, you called me at home? I said, yeah, that's the only number I could get. I apologize. I tried to find your office number, but this is the only number. And he's like, tell me about your business. So I tell him about the business, and I go into about 15 minutes. And then he goes, who is this? And I tell him, and he goes, you called me at home. So this went on for about 45 minutes where he would listen to my business pitch. Then he would ask me who I was again. And then he would chastise me for calling him at home. And then we would go back into the business again. Right. So we hang up the call, and I'm like, okay, I'm never going to hear from that guy again, but a nice guy. And about 2 weeks later, we're in our office, and I get a phone call and said, this is Mr. Kohlberg's secretary. Can you be in his office tomorrow morning at 10 a.m.? Yes, we can.
Yes, we
And
can. Yeah.
yeah, and I got my partner at the time, and we got into the car and we drove up, and got a hotel, and we stayed up over there. And it turned into, he said, the reason I brought you in, he said, look, the amount of money that you're looking for, I don't do. It's too small. The legal fees alone will kill it. But he said, we made an investment in this other company, and I think that there's some synergy with yours. So let's explore that. So we went down that path for about 60 days. And we didn't put a deal together. It just didn't work. But the guy, he became somewhat of a mentor and taught me so much in just a short amount of time. And I credit Vern for that, because I would have never had the
Oh,
nerve to call anybody to do anything like that. And since then, I've called, anybody, John Scully and David Scully and Michael Phelps. And, it doesn't matter to me, because Vern was right. What's the worst that can happen? They can say, I'm not interested. They can hang up the phone. Maybe they could yell at you, but they're not going to hit you. They're not going to come to your house and punch you. Like, what's the worst that can happen?
man,
So
that's great encouragement.
my lesson to entrepreneurs is, if there's somebody you want to talk to who has done something that you're interested in, call them, send them an email.
It's a powerful lesson, and I think that most people are thinking like, oh, they're getting calls all the time, but the reality is, most people are thinking that same thing. Oh, they get calls every. I'm not going to bother. I don't want to bother them. So it's like they're not getting a lot of these calls, right?
Yeah. No.
And it's interesting. I had this young university student. She just messaged me on Instagram, and she was a couple years older than my oldest son, and she just messaged like, "Hey, I wouldn't mind jumping on, grabbing some coffee or whatever." So okay, let's jump on a call. So I did, and we talked for like 45 minutes. Super sharp young lady, and she's just getting out of university, but I was giving her some insights, and she's asking really great questions. I get off the phone, I'm like, I feel really good. Like that was
Yeah.
like a really great call, and I think that's where like I think it's like human nature to want to help the grinder,
Yeah.
help the person that is like making the call, and it's very difficult to like get mad at them, because most of the people that were successful, they were in that position before and they remember it.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
We've all, and if you can impart some piece of advice, look, I can't invest. I don't invest in every single person that calls me, but, you know, I'll give them advice. I'll tell them what I think, and I'll be honest with them. If I think that their idea, look, I never tell an entrepreneur that he's got a bad idea. I'll never do that, because I don't know if it's a good idea or a bad
yeah,
idea, because I haven't done the research. But I will say, have you looked at this? Have you looked at this? Have you looked at this? Have you looked at this?
yeah.
That could be the best advice that I can give.
Yeah, 100%. And I think like the main kind of thing that I take away from this is nobody is untouchable. At the end of the day, if you really want to have that conversation, I love that piece of advice. Uh, so transitioning a little bit, Phil. So what are your thoughts on being the CEO of two companies? So Elon Musk, you see, he's running multiple, billion-dollar companies, and there's this kind of debate back and forth. It's like you only have one focus, and others like, well, you could do two with the right metrics. And what's your position on that to be able to like grow and scale, say, two companies at the same time?
I think that it takes a very different person to um, be able to manage the scalability of both. Scaling is very difficult. Now, if you have a company A that is mature and is running like clockwork, and you have company B that's scaling because it's a startup or whatever, I could see that. I could see saying, okay, well, we're gonna maintain here. I put in a good group of people. We're gonna maintain, but I'm gonna put 90% of my focus here, or 80% of my focus here. Doing what he does. Um, I'm not a fan of Elon Musk, and I don't know if he's really as effective as everybody thinks he is. I know that there are guys that are running Tesla that are not him, and that are making the decisions every day. Certainly, he goes in with his slash and burn mentality. Certainly with Twitter, we saw that, but he's got somebody in there running it, so I'm sure that he just gives direction. We see the problems with SpaceX, and so he's got problems here with Tesla. He's got problems with SpaceX. So what's going to happen? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can do it effectively.
Mhm.
But I think that to really make an impact, to really build something that lasts for a long time, like Apple. I think you have to focus 100%. Sure, Steve Jobs had other interests. He was doing other things, but his focus was on building Apple to be a great company. Larry Ellison has other interests, but his focus is on still on building Oracle to be a great company. So
Yeah, no, that's great insight for sure. All right, so man, I got so much here that we could be talking about, but I'm going to keep this under an hour for sure. Before I get into the investing question here, I'm curious on a marketing standpoint. What do you think is the lowest hanging fruit? I mean, you have a vast marketing background. You're super creative. I mean, I just going back to that beard idea, that to me is just, it's so creative. Um, what advice or low hanging fruit would you have? So it's like you nail down your core client and know your differentiation there. What would you say when you speak with most entrepreneurs is like the lowest hanging fruit? If you just go do this and don't ask questions, just go do it. Like this. What thing do you think comes up the most that the entrepreneurs listening could implement right away and get fruit from?
today, in today's world, as building a brand, I don't care if you're building a personal brand, I don't care if you're building a B2B brand or a B2C brand, building a brand today, anybody who's your target consumer who's under 45 or 50 years old is looking for authenticity. And we have such an opportunity today to utilize short form video in multiple places, whether it's on TikTok, YouTube, Reels, Facebook, get out there and tell your story. Be authentic. That's the best thing that you can do. And it's the thing that costs you the least. You can do it with your iPhone. You can do it with, some friends helping you. Be creative, come across well, and just talk about what it is that you have. What's your message to people? Tell people why they should buy your product. Don't sit there and say you buy my product because it's 50% off today. That's an ad, but tell them why they should buy your product. What's in it for them? Right? You're asking them to make a purchase of your product. What are they going to get out of it? And just rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. Just be creative with your videos. Just remember, you've got about 30 seconds to keep their attention. So be creative. Think about it. Go and look at what people are doing with short form video today and how they're stopping people in their tracks with funny little anecdotes, and just follow that pattern. It's the best thing that you can do. And it's the easiest and cheapest, and it's
Yeah.
it's effective. We've got a couple of young guys that came to us. They make hats with funny sayings on them, a little loose, and it's definitely appeals to a specific
Yeah.
audience. But the fact is, on TikTok, they just doing these short form videos that they were doing, very little editing. Went from zero to $100,000 in their first month, and they've grown since then. And they spend very little money on advertising, a lot of money on doing short form video and just making them funny and talking about it. And people fell in love with it. They loved it. They started buying, and it just started to build itself, and they've been profitable from day one, and they're having a great time doing it. It's a lot of fun, but they know who they are. They know who their customer is. They understand what makes them different. It's the things that they're putting on here on the hats that are these sayings that some people get offended by them, some people don't. So, but you have to know who your customer is. So that to me is the thing we tell every founder of every brand that comes to us today. How are you communicating with your customer? How are you telling them what's your point of difference? What's your message? And why should they buy your product? Don't make it all one-sided. You're going to give them something. They're buying your product. What are they going to get out of it?
That's so good. And I mean, you see that. I mean, we see that in videos that we've done before where it's like very scripted, and it's just like robotic in a way. And then the other, you pick up the phone and just a real heart to heart message.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's not even close,
Yeah.
right? It's like from a, engagement and views and, response back, it's not even close. So, and I think that's where a lot of people, I know I've been held up like this in the past where I'm trying to get everything perfect, the right lighting and, the right sound and, the mic is all perfect and, my hair's off a little bit. And, and you just don't get around to doing it versus just whipping out the phone and you got a message and boom, you say it. I think that holds a lot. I know it's held me back in the past and still working through that. But I think a lot of the the listeners maybe can resonate. Just take action, right?
Yeah. Everybody goes through that. Like you said, everybody, when you say go and make a video, oh, it wasn't good. Well, let me see them. Send me the videos. And then, my folks will look at them and say, this is a great one. We're going to put this out there. No, you can't put it out. And we
Yeah,
do it
yeah,
anyway. And it gets
yeah,
people laugh or people, make fun of it. And that's okay. You're getting
no,
engaged. They'll remember you.
yeah. That's great insight for
People
sure.
always remember funny. They
Yeah,
don't remember serious. They
yeah.
could care less.
Very cool. All right. So for the entrepreneurs listening, say their business is going really well. So they have their reserve fund there. They're, investing in their business. They're educating. What advice would you have for the entrepreneurs in regards to investing overall? I mean, there's thousands of different options out there to be able to invest their dollars. What advice would you have for them?
I think it depends on what their goals are, right? If you've got a surplus of cash because you're doing quite well with your business and you have to think about what stage of life you're in and what your family needs and all that. I mean, you have to be able to take care of, if you're young and you're going to have kids that are going to go to college. We had 5 kids and they all went to college and, it gets expensive and you've got houses and just be a little bit careful with the investments. Don't buy rapidly depreciating not liabilities, right? Like a cars. I see too many people go out in a media and believe me, I have this in me too. If I had, I tell my wife all the time, boy, if I had 50 grand sitting around that I didn't want to mess with, I'd go and buy that Rolls Royce, that old Rolls Royce. And I think that'd be cool, driving around it. Yeah, it'd be cool, but, be worth $25,000 in 2 years. And so that's not really a good use of money. So you have to think about where you are in the stage of life and what you're going to put your money into and what you're going to need at different times. You don't
Mm,
have to be showy. You don't have to be flashy. You're successful, be successful, take care of your family. It doesn't mean that you have to like go and buy the biggest house in the world and buy the biggest cars in the world because those guys, money gets tight eventually. Something happens with the business and the next thing you know, you're downsizing. You don't want to do that.
yeah,
But
yeah.
again, I'm a little bit more conservative.
Yeah, well, no, and you know what? It's a partnership. I know you had mentioned that you give all the money to your wife and she looks after it. So that's actually good advice as well. Is like know each of the strengths, right, and focus focus there. You go make it, and then she'll invest it. But yeah, that's very cool. Working together. I mean, good advice as well. I think like knowing that things can change as well. Um, Very cool. All right, Phil. So we're down to rapid fire. I have 3 questions here for you, and then we'll wrap up. You all ready?
I'm ready, born
All
ready.
right. So I know you're a big reader as well, and I'm curious, what book was the biggest, we'll say, impact in your life when you read it?
Well, there were two actually. The one that I read many years ago was a book by a guy named Harold Janine, who was the CEO, the chairman of CEO of IT&T, this old school company, and but the thing about it was he kept repeating this one phrase throughout the book: management must manage. Management must manage. Doesn't matter what happens, what's happening around you. Could be earthquakes, could be whatever. Management must manage. And that's sort of a mantra for me. I've carried it through forever. The book is a little outdated and all that, but the message to me is not. Things are going to change in the environment. Stuff is going to happen, but management must manage, right? We have to manage the business the best we can and get the best result out of it. We can't just use excuses and say, well, we had a flood. And so we still have to go on. And the second book that I love, and I still love it, is The Art of War. And
Mm.
I love that book, and I have it on my Audible, and I listen to it at least once a year, and I love that book.
Okay. Second question. 3 words. So 3 words that people around you would describe you as 3 different words. What would they be?
Oh, I think that they would say I'm a dog lover, but I'm a little insane, and I'm not afraid of failure. In
Yeah.
fact, I think they would say he has no fear.
No fear. Very cool. That's solid. I think that I think your ability to have a great conversation is something that's a real skill set as well. My final question here for you is And I think I'm curating this a little bit because of your experience. When you're going in to sell a company, what are the main things that makes a company more valuable that a CEO or a founder can structure into their business before transitioning to, say, going to market and selling it? What are some of the key things or deliverables that a CEO should be focused on?
Yeah, I'll tell you this, and you can look at it historically. Brands sell for a multiple of sales, whereas selling groups, things, people that just, or companies that just sell product, they sell for a multiple of EBITDA, right? So what would you rather sell for? A multiple of sales or a multiple of EBITDA? Brands are always valuable, more valuable. So focus on selling the brand, focus on being a brand. And that's going to mean you have a clear point of difference. You have a clear message that you're talking to your customer about, and customers are attaching to you, right? You build a brand, you're going to get a great valuation. You look at a brand like Glossier, what she did with that. She built a brand, and she's got a multi-billion-dollar valuation now. She shot up. It was tremendous, and she started out as a blogger in her spare time. You look at Truff. You look at what they did with hot sauce. You look at Graza, what they did with olive oil. You're building a brand. That brand is standing for something. The customers are attaching to it. They like it, and you're now worth a lot more than what I think. There was a period of time. I think, in fact, Dollar Shave Club sold to Unilever for close to $1 billion, and people were looking at it going, well, Gillette's only worth $2 billion. Well, yeah, because it's just they haven't done anything innovative in a long time. These guys innovated. So
That's amazing. Phil, so much wisdom through your experience. I know you're a busy guy, and I really appreciate you coming on the show and being complete open book. It's like talking to you is like talking to, it's like it's that very wise advisor mentor that I think all the listeners out there listening right now would have had so much. And I think definitely listeners should go back and re-listen because there were some real good nuggets there that if they apply to their business will help them go to the next level. So I really appreciate you coming on the show.
I appreciate you having me. I think it was a lot of fun. Great questions. It was a lot of fun.
Now, Phil, just before we wrap up here, what's the best way for listeners if they want to reach out and maybe they want to have you come into their business and assess and hire you? What's the best way they can reach out?
Well, there's a couple of ways. You can hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn. You can get me at crunchgrowth.com. You can send a message through there. You can just email me, phil@crunchgrowth.com. You can get me at phil@philmasiello.com. I have another website, philmasiello.com. I'm very easy to find.
That's amazing. Well, thanks again for coming on the show, Phil. We really appreciate
My
it.
pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Right on. Well, thanks for listening, guys. If you enjoyed the show, please share and subscribe to the channel where we're building a community of up and coming entrepreneurs. And if you are looking for a real estate investment and you can't find any good deals out there, go to fulloutinvesting.com. We have our full 10-step full out investing process and a sample deal there as well. Go to fulloutinvesting.com. And just remember, the fastest way to build wealth is to grow your business and invest in real estate. I love you guys.